Welcome to another deep dive. This one might just make you rethink that tofu scramble or soy latte you're so fond of. We're going to be tackling soy today.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It seems like it's practically taken over as a modern dietary staple.
It really has.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look.
Are we really getting the full story? I'm not so sure.
Well, that's what we're here to uncover, right?
Mm.
You've brought in emerging dangers of soy products and
Yes.
the margarine hoax,
Exactly.
both making some pretty thought-provoking claims that really challenge that miracle food image we're constantly being sold about soy.
Yes. It really does have this halo, like this health halo around it, lowering cholesterol and fighting cancer and
You name it.
all these benefits.
Yeah.
But these articles are suggesting there's a shadow side
Right.
that we might be completely missing.
There's definitely more to the story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how much soy's image has shifted.
Oh, absolutely.
Decades ago, it was barely a blip on the American radar. Now it's everywhere.
It's ubiquitous.
And these articles point to a potent mix of marketing and government regulations,
Oh, yeah.
research, all playing a part in that transformation.
It's really fascinating how that all came together.
It is, isn't it?
And they both mentioned school lunches.
Uh-huh.
This push to get soy, especially in the form of soy protein, into school lunches.
Well, it was all done in the name of, reducing fat content to meet those government guidelines.
Right.
But doing so, we've introduced a lot of processed soy into children's diets.
Yeah, and at what cost?
Yeah, exactly. It begs the question, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, and soy milk. I mean, it's gone from like this niche thing to completely mainstream.
Oh, yeah?
Even replacing cow's milk for a lot of people.
And the rise of soy milk is really a testament to, what food processing can do.
Absolutely.
They've managed to make it,
Palatable.
yeah, palatable, even trendy.
Right.
But what we'll delve into is how that processing can actually make it less healthy.
Yeah. Right. Now, both of these articles really emphasize that historically, Asian cultures, they primarily consumed fermented soy products like tempeh and miso, soy sauce.
Yeah.
And they certainly weren't eating the quantities of soy that we do today.
Nowhere near the amounts.
So why is that? What's the key there?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Soybeans, in their natural state, they contain these compounds called anti-nutrients.
Okay.
And these compounds can actually interfere with the body's ability to absorb other nutrients and potentially have some negative effects.
Okay. Anti-nutrients. They sound exactly like what they are, like
Yeah.
anti-nutrients.
Pretty straightforward name.
So can you break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. So imagine this. You're having a meal with soybeans. Your body's trying to,
Break it down.
break down the protein.
Right.
But soybeans contain trypsin inhibitors.
Okay.
And these compounds block the action of trypsin, which is an enzyme that's essential for protein digestion.
Okay.
And this interference can lead to a bunch of different digestive issues. And in more extreme cases, even pancreatic problems.
But that's not exactly what you want happening after your
Right.
big soy-based meal.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's not all. We also have things like hemagglutinin, a compound that can cause red blood cells to clump together.
Okay.
Then we have goitrogens,
Mm.
which can affect your thyroid function.
Right.
And let's not forget phytic acid.
Phytic acid. Now that's one I've heard of before.
Oh, yeah.
So what's that one all about?
Well, it's often called a mineral blocker because it binds to these essential minerals
Huh.
like zinc and iron,
Okay.
calcium, magnesium in the gut, and prevents their absorption.
And it's in the soybeans.
It is. and this is particularly relevant for vegetarians who rely heavily on soy for their protein.
Okay, so unfermented soy is basically like setting up roadblocks to our nutrient absorption.
It's like putting up a big do not enter sign
It's like, yeah, exactly.
for all the good stuff.
No wonder those traditional Asian cultures focused on the fermented stuff.
That's right, because fermentation, it's like this pre-digestion. It breaks down these anti-nutrients and makes soy a lot easier for our bodies to handle.
They figured it out way back when.
They knew what they were doing.
But that brings us to, I think, a key point, which is that a lot of the soy we consume today is not fermented.
That's right.
It's this highly processed ingredient called soy protein isolate,
Yeah,
which we find in everything. Protein bars, veggie burgers, you name it.
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And the process to create it, while sounding very sophisticated, actually introduces a whole new set of potential concerns.
It does.
Okay, so lay it on us. What's happening behind the scenes with this soy protein isolate?
Well, to get rid of those anti-nutrients, to make it more palatable. And it goes quite a journey. Alkaline washes, acid precipitation, high temperature drying. It's quite a process.
Okay.
And this process, while seemingly clever, can actually introduce new problems.
Okay, I'm bracing myself. What are the downsides to all that processing?
Well, for one thing, there's the risk of contamination. That acid washing process
Yeah.
often uses aluminum tanks.
Okay.
And there's a chance that aluminum can actually leach into the final product.
Aluminum, not something we want more of in our systems.
Not exactly.
Ugh.
And the high heat used in processing can also lead to the formation of nitrites and a compound called lysinoalanine, both of which have been linked to cancer.
Hold on. They created this super processed ingredient to remove anti-nutrients.
Right.
And in the process, they potentially introduced carcinogens.
That's right.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, a bit ironic, isn't it?
And Fallon and Enig mentioned this study looking at Central American children who were given soy protein isolate drinks.
Yeah.
And despite heavy supplementation, these kids experience all sorts of digestive issues.
Oh, yeah. Vomiting, diarrhea.
Rashes, fevers.
Not exactly a glowing endorsement for soy protein isolate as a healthy replacement for real food.
This is really making me rethink that soy protein bar I have in my pantry.
Yeah.
But what about the FDA's health claim about soy protein lowering cholesterol? Doesn't that, legitimize its use?
Well, that's a great question. And taking a closer look at that claim reveals some pretty big cracks in that seemingly solid foundation.
Okay, let's hear it. Break it down for us.
Okay, so one of the first things that jumps out is that the FDA, when they approved this claim, they seem to completely overlook any concerns about isoflavones. They're estrogen-like compounds we talked about earlier that are naturally found in soy.
Right.
They just kind of brush those concerns under the rug.
That's a pretty big omission considering what we've been learning about messing with our hormones and all that.
Yeah, big omission. And the FDA's claim is based on a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies.
Okay.
Which, as we know, can be prone to bias depending on which studies they include and how they analyze the data, plus the cholesterol reduction they saw. Only significant for individuals with very high cholesterol levels to begin with.
So not that relevant.
No, for the average person.
To most people.
Exactly.
So for most people, the cholesterol-lowering benefit is minimal at best.
Pretty much. And here's another point to consider. Some of the studies that have successfully lowered cholesterol using medication have actually found an increase in death from various causes.
Wow.
So why isn't that being considered when we're talking about soy protein and cholesterol?
It seems like there's a lot of kind of cherry picking of data
It does seem that way.
going on here to make soy look good.
Yeah.
Now, another big claim we hear all the time is that soy can prevent cancer,
Yeah,
especially in women.
that's right.
So what's the reality there?
Well, that claim is, it's taken root in the public consciousness.
It really has.
And it's often tied to the fact that Japanese people traditionally consume more soy and they have lower rates of some reproductive cancers.
Right. But our sources point out that the story's not that simple.
No, it's not that simple at all.
They actually highlighted that Japanese people also have higher rates of other cancers, particularly thyroid and digestive system cancers. And the actual amount of soy eaten in Japan is far less than we're often told.
Yeah, it averages less than 2 teaspoons of soy protein per day.
Plus, all those anti-nutrients we talked about earlier, they might also be playing a role in those cancer rates.
It's very possible.
It's not just about soy itself, it's how it's prepared.
Yeah.
How it's consumed.
Absolutely. And when you look at the research on soy and cancer, the results are all over the place. Some studies even suggest an increased risk. The bold claims about soy being this cancer fighter, they're simply not supported by strong scientific evidence.
Okay, so let's talk about those isoflavones a little bit more.
All right.
These estrogen-like compounds that the FDA seem to conveniently just brush aside.
Yeah. The margarine hoax has this really striking anecdote about some bird breeders in New Zealand.
Oh, tell me about it.
Oh, yeah. The Janeses. Their story's a prime example of how powerful these isoflavones can be. So they were feeding their parrots a soy-based feed.
Oh.
And the birds started experiencing all these health problems. Early maturation, infertility, beak deformities. They even started having aggressive behavior changes.
It's like a real-life avian horror movie.
It really is.
But what's the connection to us humans?
Well, there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that isoflavones can disrupt our endocrine system.
Okay.
That intricate network of hormones that regulates so many bodily functions
Yeah.
in both animals and humans.
So even small amounts of soy could be having a bigger impact than we realize.
It's very possible. The Swiss Health Service actually estimated that 100 grams of soy protein, which is often the recommended amount for cholesterol lowering,
Yeah.
has the estrogenic equivalent of a birth control pill.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It is.
And it makes you really wonder about those claims that isoflavones can help with menopause symptoms.
It does. The research on soy and menopause is, well, it's mixed. Some studies suggest a mild benefit for hot flashes, but others show, no real difference compared to a placebo.
Right.
And you always have to weigh those potential benefits against the potential risks of endocrine disruption, especially long term.
Right, right.
So,
It's almost like playing hormonal roulette.
yeah, it is a bit of a gamble.
And speaking of potential risks, both articles raise serious concerns about soy infant formula
Yeah,
and the high levels of isoflavones that babies are exposed to.
that's a big one. We're talking about infants whose hormonal systems are still developing.
Right.
And they're being hit with these doses of isoflavones that far exceed what's been shown to have hormonal effects in adults.
Yeah, it's like this giant experiment being conducted without their consent.
It really is. And the potential consequences of that kind of exposure are huge.
So what are we talking about here? What are the potential consequences?
Well, male infants, for example, they experience a surge of testosterone during those first few months of life,
Right.
which is crucial for their development. So how do these high levels of isoflavones impact that?
Right.
We don't really know, and that's the scary part.
And what about girls?
Well, we're seeing this rise in early puberty in girls,
Huh?
and soy infant formula could very well be contributing to that.
And the Jameses?
Oh, yeah, those bird breeders.
They actually received reports from parents
They did.
about health problems in their children who'd been fed soy-based formula.
It's pretty alarming. Asthma, immune system issues, thyroid disorders.
Wow, so it's like a domino effect? You expose these infants to high levels of phytoestrogens?
Right.
You potentially disrupt their hormonal development, which
Yeah.
can then lead to all these other health issues down the road.
It's not a good picture.
And what's really disturbing is that the soy industry has been aware of these dangers for a long time.
They have. And they've chosen to downplay or ignore them.
Emerging Dangers of Soy Products mentions some dissenting voices.
Yes.
At the Third International Soy Symposium, who raised these concerns about brain aging, thyroid damage, developmental problems in offspring.
Right. And those concerns were basically swept under the rug.
It seems like a classic case of
Profits over people.
profits over people.
Exactly. They've invested so much in creating this image of soy as this miracle food that they're not going to let a few inconvenient truths derail that gravy train.
And speaking of inconvenient truths,
Oh, yeah?
both sources pointed out this rather startling legal issue.
Oh, what's that?
Soy protein isolate, this ingredient we find everywhere,
Uh-huh.
never actually received GRS status from the FDA.
That's right. GRES, generally recognized as safe.
Generally recognized as safe.
And back in the 70s, the FDA actually reviewed the safety of soy protein isolate and found it contained concerning levels of carcinogens like nitrites and lysinoalanine.
Wow.
They called for more safety testing before they granted GRAS status, but those tests were never done.
So technically, soy protein isolate shouldn't even be in our food supply.
Well, it's a legal gray area that the industries managed to exploit. And as more people are becoming aware of these potential dangers,
Right.
there's this growing possibility of legal action against the industry.
Emerging Dangers of Soy Products even went so far as to compare soy to asbestos,
Wow.
which, as we know, was a product initially hailed as safe, but later revealed to be incredibly dangerous.
That's a pretty provocative comparison.
It is.
But it really highlights the potential for long-term health consequences that we might not even be aware of yet.
And remember Marion Burroughs, the food writer for the New York Times?
Oh, yeah, the one who's a big advocate for soy.
Yeah, even she started expressing concerns about the safety of isoflavones in a 2000 article, which is pretty telling, wouldn't you say?
Very telling.
So even the cheerleaders for soy are starting to question the narrative.
It seems that way.
I mean, it seems like the tide is slowly turning as more research comes out and more people start connecting the dots between their soy consumption and their health problems.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely gives you pause.
It does. So where do we go from here? Should we all be like swearing off soy completely? I mean, what's the takeaway here?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, remember, traditionally fermented soy products, like they've been a part of Asian cuisine for centuries.
Right.
It's the highly processed, unfermented soy that we should be most cautious about.
So enjoying tempeh, miso, soy sauce in moderation, that's probably okay.
Yeah, exactly. And not only are they safer, from an anti-nutrient perspective,
Uh-huh.
but they also, add that delicious umami depth to dishes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really about, choosing those minimally processed, traditionally prepared forms of soy.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about all those other soy products that have become so common? Soy milk, tofu, edamame.
Well, I think it's about being mindful of the potential risks and making informed choices.
Okay.
Opt for organic soy whenever possible to reduce pesticide exposure
Right.
and prioritize those fermented options if you can. And most importantly, listen to your body.
Yeah, I mean, tuning into how our bodies respond to different foods.
Exactly.
It's such a crucial point.
It is.
If you're experiencing digestive issues or hormonal imbalances or other health concerns,
Yeah,
it might be worth, experimenting with reducing your soy intake and seeing if that makes a difference.
absolutely. I mean, this deep dive wasn't about, demonizing soy altogether.
Right.
But it's about empowering you to make educated decisions about what you choose to eat.
Yeah.
We've been bombarded with so much conflicting information about soy. It's easy to feel lost.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this confusing landscape, and make
Yeah.
choices that are good for our health, that align with our health goals?
Well, first and foremost, you got to be a critical thinker. Don't blindly accept what you're told, especially when it comes to these heavily marketed products.
Right.
Do your own research, consider the source of the information, and look for potential biases.
Right.
Remember, knowledge is power.
Yes. And it's so important to remember that there's a huge difference between those traditional fermented soy products
Right.
and those highly processed soy ingredients that are added to so many foods.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
We've seen how processing can strip away nutrients, concentrate anti-nutrients, and even introduce those potentially harmful compounds.
Right.
Choosing real whole foods is always a good starting point.
It kind of brings us back to those foundational principles of healthy eating.
Yeah.
Choose whole, unprocessed foods, prioritize nutrient density, and pay attention to your body's signals.
Couldn't agree more.
Those are principles that apply no matter what dietary choices you make.
That's right.
Well, this has been an eye-opening conversation for sure.
It has.
It's amazing how much we can learn when we really dig deep into a topic and challenge those assumptions we've been carrying around.
Yeah, it's always good to question what we think we know.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there who are feeling, maybe a little bit overwhelmed or intrigued by all of this, where would you direct them?
Well, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I would say keep exploring.
Okay.
Research traditional soy foods, delve deeper into those potential dangers of processed foods, and stay informed about the latest scientific findings on soy. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make choices that support your well-being.
Well, thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, everyone, stay curious, keep questioning, and remember, your health is in your hands.
It really is.
It feels like we've uncovered a whole other side to soy.
We have.
One that's often hidden
Yeah.
behind these marketing slogans and all these health claims we hear.
Definitely more than meets the eye.
More than meets the eye. So where do we go from here? Should we all be swearing off soy completely?
I don't think so. I mean, remember traditionally fermented soy products. Those have been a part of Asian cuisines for centuries, right?
Right.
It's the highly processed, unfermented soy that we should most cautious about.
Okay. So enjoying tempeh and miso, soy sauce, in moderation, that's probably okay.
Exactly. And not only are they safer from the, anti-nutrient perspective, but they add that, delicious umami depth to dishes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really about choosing those minimally processed, traditionally prepared forms of soy.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about all those other soy products that have become so common? Soy milk, tofu, edamame.
Well, I think it's about being mindful of the potential risks and making informed choices.
Okay.
Opting for organic soy whenever you can to reduce, pesticide exposure.
Okay.
And prioritizing those fermented options.
Right.
But most importantly, listen to your body.
Yeah, tuning in to how our body actually responds to different foods is so important.
It's crucial.
If you're experiencing digestive issues or hormonal imbalances or any kind of health concerns, it might be worth experimenting with cutting back on the soy and just seeing if it makes a difference.
It's a good experiment.
It can't hurt.
Yeah, definitely. And, this deep dive wasn't about demonizing soy altogether.
Right.
It was about empowering you with the information to make educated decisions about what you choose to eat.
Right.
Because let's face it, we've been bombarded with so much conflicting information about soy, it's easy to feel lost.
Absolutely. So how do we navigate this confusing landscape and make choices that are truly in line with our health goals?
Well, I'd say, first and foremost, be a critical thinker.
Okay.
Don't just blindly accept what you're told, especially when it comes to these heavily marketed products, right?
Right.
Do your own research, consider the source of the information, and look for those potential biases.
Yeah.
Because remember, knowledge is power when it comes to making informed choices.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to remember that there's a huge difference between those traditional fermented soy products and the highly processed soy ingredients we find added to so many foods.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen how processing can strip away nutrients, concentrate those anti-nutrients, and even introduce those potentially harmful compounds.
Right.
So choosing real whole foods is always a good starting point.
It always is. And it kind of brings us back to those, those basic principles of healthy eating. Choose whole, unprocessed foods, prioritize nutrient density, and pay attention to those signals your body's giving you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Those are principles that apply no matter what dietary choices you're making.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an eye-opening conversation, for sure.
It really has.
It's amazing how much we can learn when we really dig deep into a topic.
Absolutely.
And challenge those assumptions that we've been carrying around.
Always good to question what we think we know.
Always good to question. So, to our listeners out there who might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed or maybe really intrigued by everything we've talked about today, what final thoughts would you leave them with?
If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to keep exploring.
Okay.
Research traditional soy foods, delve deeper into those potential dangers of processed foods, and stay informed about the latest scientific findings on soy.
Okay.
The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make those choices that support your well-being.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of soy.
It's been my pleasure.
And until next time, everyone, stay curious, keep questioning, and remember, your health is in your hands.